Hi everyone, and thanks for your interest in the Psychology Department's Master's Degree program, and in particular, the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence in that Master's program. So just some background on our department. Our department has a PhD program in school psychology, and we have a separate program in clinical counseling psychology. In addition to those programs, we also have a master's degree program. And one of the sequences in that program is the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence. Presumably that's the sequence that you're interested in if you're watching this video. We also have sequences in developmental psychology, industrial organizational social psychology, and quantitative psychology. And I'll come back to talking about each of those in just a minute. But given that your primary interest is in the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence, let's talk further about that sequence. We have a number of faculty who do research in this area who are affiliated with this sequence. They're listed here, and I'll come back to most of them to talk about their specific research interests in a little bit. Here is a website where you can find more information. It's kind of long and complicated, but really if you go to the Psychology Department website, which is just psychology.illinoisstate.edu, and then follow the links to the graduate program, our master's program, and then the sequence, you can find everything you're looking for. And most of what I'm talking about today comes pretty much directly from that website. So here's the description of the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence, and there's a lot of words here, but I just want to point out some key things for you. So the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences graduate sequence emphasizes study in basic research areas, including behavioral neuropsychology, conditioning, otherwise known as learning, perception, memory, psycholinguistics, and cognitive development, and the development of quantitative and methodological skills. These are the basic research interests of our faculty, the people that I just showed on the previous page and that you'll meet in just a minute, all do research in these areas. The other thing I wanted to point out is that really what we do with students is we prepare them to be scientists, we prepare them to be data analysts, but we prepare them to be working in these particular areas. It can be a little bit confusing because the name of our sequence is Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences, and there's also a kind of therapy called Cognitive and Behavioral Therapy, but that is not at all what we do. We are interested in these basic research areas that can sort of loosely be described as cognitive psychology or experimental psychology. We focus on three general content areas. We have experts in behavioral, neuroscience, and cognitive science. And we are preparing our students to go to a PhD program from our master's program or to go on to research-related careers. And I'll talk to you in a few minutes about those. And we expect that our students can complete this program in 2 years of full-time enrollment on campus. This program is not intended to be completed part-time. We know students might have to work outside of their time on campus, but really this should be the primary focus if you're enrolled in this program. And it was never intended to be a completely online program, although this will depend on how long we're in an online setting given the current COVID environment. So now I want to introduce you to some of our faculty. This is Dr. Tom Critchfield over here. He studies learning, and you can see general topics in behavior analysis and learning. So he's interested in what events precede certain behaviors, what outcomes come after certain behaviors, and then how we can use that knowledge to change behaviors of both people and animals. Dr. Cooper Cutting is interested in psycholinguistics. He's interested in language production and quantitative methods in psychology and cognitive psychology in general. However, Dr. Cutting has recently taken a position in the provost's office, so he is currently unable to take on new students, at least for the next few years. Then there's Dr. Farmer Dugan. She studies animal behavior. In particular, her current focus is on dogs, as you can see here. So she's interested in experimental and applied analysis of behavior canine behavior and cognition. As I mentioned, she runs a dog lab. She studies behavioral neuroscience, what she calls disequilibrium models of reinforcement, neurobiology of reinforcement, and developmental disability. She has a website here, and you can find her on our psychology department website as well. Then there's Dr. Byron Heidenreich. He studies behavioral neuroscience. Dr. Alicia Hund, who is also our undergraduate coordinator. She is a cognitive developmental psychologist, and she studies, as you might expect, cognitive development, executive functioning, spatial cognition, STEM learning, and she also uses GIS systems to understand elementary education and school readiness and achievement, and she has a website that you can visit as well. This is Dr. Scott Jordan. He is our department chair. He studies things like consciousness and volition, action planning, and intentionality, and this is his website. This is Dr. Dawn McBride. She studies memory, in particular prospective memory. Prospective memory is memory for planning. So if I plan to do this, that, or the other later today, I need to remember to do it. That's prospective memory. She also studies false memory, implicit memory, and forgetting, and she has a website that should be pretty easy for you to remember. This is me. I'm Dr. Jeff Wagman. I am the coordinator of the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence, and I study perception action, in particular a perspective known as ecological psychology, and haptic perception, which is perception by touch, and tool use. I study perceptual learning, so how perception improves with practice, and perception of affordances, which are opportunities for behavior. So how you know whether you can perform a particular behavior or not. And this is my website. And finally, Dr. Corinne Zimmerman is also a cognitive developmental psychologist. She studies the development of scientific reasoning. She studies scientific literacy, understanding of scientific concepts, and inductive inference, and this is her website here. So now that I've introduced you to the faculty who are affiliated with our program, I want to talk a bit about our curriculum. I mentioned this is a 2-year program. That means you're going to be compressing this your graduate study into 4 semesters, and so there'll be a lot that's going on here. So in your first semester, you'll be taking a class, a graduate class on learning and cognition, and then a course that we call Pro Seminar. You'll see that this is a 1-credit class. Most of our credit classes are 3 credits, but what Pro Seminar is professional development seminar. And this is a 1-credit hour class where we meet once a week as a group of faculty and students to talk about professional development issues. The kinds of things that you need to do to become a professional in our field. How do you present your research? How do you write a journal article? How do you interact with colleagues at a conference? Things like that. And we also bring in guest speakers who present their research. We also present people from around campus to come and talk about career opportunities and things like that. And then you'll take a statistics class, a seminar in psychology, which changes every year on what exactly it's on, but it'll be taught probably by one of the faculty in the Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences sequence, or you can replace it with an elective if that elective fits better with your interests. And then finally, an independent study. An independent study is where you are working with a faculty member in their lab, conducting research that is of interest to both of you. This is one of the reasons I introduced you to the faculty members before and what they do, because we recommend that our students do this in the very first semester so that they can get experience in a particular lab, not only to build their toolbox of skills in research, but also to sort of think about possible master's thesis topics. That's not something that you need to think that much about in your first year, but this is just a way to get people in to that mindset. And then in the spring semester, we do another semester of Pro Seminar, and then you continue your statistical and research methods courses by taking 441, which is experimental design. And then you take a course that I will teach, cognitive science, or a course on experimental analysis of behavior, and a course on neurobiology, and then probably another independent study. One independent study per semester is probably what you should be thinking about, especially in your first year. And these independent studies can be with different people. So you might be interested in my research, and so you want to do an independent study with me, and then maybe you want to see what it's like to do research with Dr. Hund or Dr. McBride or Dr. Heidenreich. All of that's fine, and that's actually good to get varied experiences across different labs. In your second year, your curriculum looks like this. You take Pro Seminar again. You take another Sci 480 or an elective. And then you begin taking these master's thesis credit hours. So by now, in your second year, after you have experience in one or two or more faculty labs, you begin to develop a thesis idea, and maybe you begin to conduct research toward that thesis. Now, this is just a way for you to get university credit for doing that work, and then another elective. And then in the spring, you'll take whatever course you didn't take, Sci 455 or 462, as well as Pro Seminar in your master's thesis. There are fewer courses in your spring of your second year, because by this time you should be working much more intensively on your master's thesis and working on writing that document and analyzing your data. So here's where I return to the other sequence options in this in our master's program. We have a dual sequence option. This means that students can complete two sequences simultaneously. The most common and the one that makes the most sense, I think, for students who are interested in cognitive and behavioral sciences is to do a dual sequence with quantitative psychology. What this might mean, this means that when you finish our master's program, you end up with completing both sequences. Quantitative psychology is important because it gives you some marketable skills beyond those that you would get in our sequence alone. And what it ends up doing is it ends up eating up your opportunity to take certain electives like this one or this one at various points through the curriculum in cognitive behavioral sciences. And a number of our students do this. You just need to think about it and be aware of it early so that you can finish the coursework. Now I wanted to talk a bit about what our students do when they're done with our program. I mentioned that we train people to be scientists, to be researchers, to be data analysts, and that is exactly what many of our graduates do. Some of our graduates go on to PhD programs, that they enter our master's program because they don't feel like they're quite ready to enter a PhD program, or maybe they don't know exactly what they would want to study in a PhD program, so they enter our master's program. They get a good feel for this, and then they go on to PhD programs, and our recent graduates have completed their PhDs at places like the University of Cincinnati, Clemson University, University of California, Merced, and Washington University in St. Louis, and then go on to take faculty positions at places like University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, Butler University, University of Georgia, and Colby College. So we have a very good track record, and there's more beyond these examples I've given you, a very good track record of getting our students into PhD programs and then having those students go on to faculty positions if that's what they want to do. For students who are not interested in that who want to take a master's and then go into industry, we also have a good track record of placing students in these positions. So some of our students have gotten jobs at Collegius Education, which is a data analysis company that studies educational issues. People have gone on to become lab managers and research assistants at places like University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and more locally, they have gone on to work as data analysts for child care and research and referral centers in the area. So I wanted to make you aware, if all of this sounds interesting to you, then I wanted to make you aware of the application process. Our application deadline is January 1st, and it's for the fall semester only, meaning that you would submit an application by January 1st of a certain year, and then if you were accepted, begin study in the fall of that year. We normally don't take new students in the spring, mostly because of the sequence of courses that need to be completed. It makes things very difficult. So January 1st for admission into the fall semester. We would like you to have a minimum GPA of at least 3.0 out of 4 for your last 60 hours of coursework. We'd also like you to have undergraduate classes in general psychology, research methods, and statistics. That little asterisk there is to remind me to tell you that having these classes is not a prerequisite for admission. But it does mean that you will need to make up for these classes at some point. So we can take you if you don't have these classes, but you will need to have completed them before or while you are in our program. So please keep that in mind. We are not requiring the GRE scores for this application cycle. This is for a few different reasons, but mostly because of the difficulty that students have had in trying to take the GRE given COVID and all of its complications. We want you to submit a CV, a resume of some sort, a writing sample, a personal statement, and then have 3 recommenders submit letters. In your personal statement, I just want to say a bit about this. It would really benefit you, and also in the application itself, it would really benefit you to name 2 or 3 faculty members who you might want to work with, whose research interests you. This is really important for us to figure out whether you are a good fit for our program. So if you want to study canine cognition, well, that's great because we've got Dr. Farmer Dugan who studies exactly that. But if you are interested in studying primate cognition, well, that's great too, but we don't have someone who does that. So it's really important in your personal statement to tell us how it is you got to where you are, why it is you want to come to our program, and whose research interests you, and why you're a good fit for us. We will have an applicant interview day on Friday, March 1st. So you submit your application by the January 1st deadline. This gives us a few months to review things and for the applications to make their way through the university pipeline. You may or may not get an invitation to an interview day. This will most likely be online. And then after that, if you are offered admission, and we can usually take about 5 students or so, 4 or 5 students every year. If you are offered admission, you will also be offered a graduate assistantship. This means that you will be assigned to work for a particular faculty member, doing some tasks for them. Maybe they'll want you to assist with their teaching, maybe they'll want you to assist with their research, maybe they'll want you to do other things for their various responsibilities at the university. But the important part for you is that this comes with a tuition waiver and a small stipend. So all first-year students will be offered this, so that means that you will not pay tuition and that you will even get a small stipend. Funding is not guaranteed beyond the first year, but we generally are able to find funding for second-year students who are looking. This may mean that you need to take a graduate assistantship outside of our department. Maybe you can't work with a faculty member for this assistantship. Maybe you need to do it somewhere else, like at the library or some other office on campus. But usually we can find funding for second-year students so that they can finish. If you have any questions, you can email me. It's just my name, Jeffrey Wagman at illinoisstate.edu. I'd be happy to hear from you, and we look forward to receiving your application and reading about why it is you'd be a good fit for our program, and hopefully meeting you at our interview day in March. Thank you.